Peace family, I'm Joe Dash. I'm here to talk about religion and spirituality and here to discuss the difference between the two and to decide whether or not these things have been helping us as a people. To start off, I think it's best to kind of come from the angle of what religion is and what spirituality is. First of all, the word spirit means breath, that which animates you. You know, our ancient ancestors in the Kemites from Egypt, Kemet is Egypt, called spirit the Ka, right? That which animates you, that which lived before you. And then religion is kind of the social order constructed to dedicate itself to the practicing of a form of worshipping to a deity. Now, even though the line is thin, it's kind of expanded a lot over the years. So that means that what we call religion back then was more scientific. So what religion is now is more cultic to me. And why do I say that? Because religion has gathered so much meaning along the way that it's so far off from what it was intended to be. So if we look at religion now as from whether it be Christianity, Islam, or whatever the case may be, it's now been moved into a place where it's run by a specific mindset. And that mindset is not natural to the man or the female. So what we want to kind of discuss is say, what is good for Africans and how can we use that to move forward? If spirituality is the way forward or is religion the way forward? And what has religion done for the world and what's spirituality done for the world? So, religion. How did religion come into Africa? Well, everyone knows the general consensus of how religion came to Africa, but just to recap, Christianity came into Africa many years ago. The Catholic Church we know now is through the Middle Ages, right? But the concepts of Christianity, concepts meaning the ideas you find in the Bible, have been inscribed on tablets and temple walls since the beginning of time. Even Islam. In fact, what people don't know is that both Islam and Christianity came out of Egypt. Both ideologies, right? And it's just that at the time, they were not called Christianity, they were not called Islam. In fact, what we look at, the earliest Bible we can find transcribed in history is called the Septuagint. And it's also known as the Double XL, which means the 70. It was under the Greco-Roman Empire that actually took over Egypt after the Third Dynasty. So after the Persians had it, you know, they were conquered by, the Greeks had it, then they were conquered by the Persians, and that's where you have all the story of the 300 and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, this first book, the Septuagint, it was transcribed by so-called Hellenistic Jews, because back then the name for Greeks was Hellenes. It wasn't called Greeks. Greek is a middle-aged term, but the actual name for these group of people were Hellenes. And they would not refer to themselves as Europeans or Caucasians or white, because you have to bear in mind is Dr. Blumenbach broke the concept of race and Caucasian during the late 1700s. So this race concept is just a modern kind of ideology that we've put into the society. So religion has come at that time, and the whole point of religion was when groups of people conquered other groups of people, they would either do one or two things: subdue everyone else's practice, and you started to become what they called assimilators. You assimilate the powers that be. So now you start to act like them, dress like them, walk like them. But if you follow the Babylonian Empire, what you saw was, different groups that came and conquered will allow people to practice their own religion and be free, but they couldn't control the rebellions. So when you go over into Rome, the Byzantine Empire, which was run by Constantine at that time, and everyone should know who Constantine is, he kind of put together the final pieces of what we know today as the Bible. What we call religion is not a natural part of life. It is a lifestyle choice. Islam is the same thing. People need to remember before Muhammad, Islam was being practiced. And people need to understand that the first mosques or the temples at the time existed way before Muhammad did. So when you look at prayer, let's look at the prayer system that they do 5 times a day, which was added on after. But before, in the Quran, it speaks on 3 times a day. It's the Hadith. If people don't know the difference in the Quran and the Hadith is actually the lifestyle of Muhammad, and the Quran is actually the holy book itself. Islam, in the Quran, you pray 3 times a day. That came from Egypt, to pray 3 times a day. Even the form of prayer of standing up in the 3 positions of up and then down into the floor is an ancient Egyptian thing. So when you start to see bits and pieces of the fabric of religion it's not an original story. These are stories that have been ripped from other places. So now, with that said, we have to look at, okay, all these things, does it take away what's great about it? Some people say, the Bible's helped a lot of people, the Quran's helped a lot of people find a righteous path, what we call a righteous path, or help them find peace. Because originally Islam is what they call a deen. A deen means to arrive at judgment, to arrive at judgment peacefully. But the problem is, you can take any piece of literature and turn it into something extreme or something that's good for the people. So as Africans, my whole contention with that is, we have not seen the full story to yet decide what role we're going to take on. How many of us really know our ancient African history? How many of us know our spirituality for us to now make the decision to say, hey, I want to become Christian, I want to become Muslim? But if you haven't been given the choice, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, that if you give a man dirty water and clean water, he's going to take clean water every time, because it's what's purest to him. Spirituality on the other side of things is your nature, is what your essence is, because as I said earlier, the word spirit means breath. It's what makes you alive. So when you see spirituality, I don't need to think of people meditating and crystals and all that. That's just man-made religion. This is how we've religiousized spirituality. And when we use the word religion, whether I'm using it back and forth, it's nothing negative. It's just a way for me to kind of keep you in a mindset of everything has a format of religion attached to it. But is it coming from self, or is it coming from external? And if you read the Bible from a kind of esoteric point of view, you find out the Bible makes various references to the concept of you being a God yourself, or you being a temple of God, or God dwelling within you. So people would say, well, it's not the book, it's the people that have the problem. But the same book would say that you should know them by their fruits. So if no good person is coming out of a specific situation, can we not justify and say that situation is not good for people? So if you go to jail and come out even worse, can we say it's not the jail, it's the people? So it's the kind of mindset we have to look at. So I'm not here to say which one's wrong or right. I'm just saying we need to challenge these things, because we've been in a predicament as a people for so long. It's time to assess everything. Everything is up for audit at this point in time in 2016. We need to audit everything. Is this working for us? Is Christianity the way forward? Is Islam the way forward? Is spirituality the way forward? We need to start auditing these things, because we've had a 1,000-year plus of this religion. And can we look back at it and say, hey, it's been a great ride? Or can we say, let's try something else? And that's the concept today. So for us as Africans, we need to understand that being spiritual is more closer to your nature than anything else, because it's about you having an experience rather than living vicariously through a concept. African spirituality is a fascinating tapestry of philosophy. It's such a brilliant thing to observe, because it's about connecting oneself to one's higher self. So how do you do that, and what's one's higher self? One's higher self is the level of conscious and awareness one can attain within this physical body. Because the more conscious and aware you are of something, the more foresight you have to something. So on a day-to-day basis, African spirituality would be, you wake up and you give praises to the sun. So when we say to the sun, we're not talking about worship. We need to be this clear, black people, that when we say praises to the sun, when you praise something, you're not worshiping it, you're just giving reverence to something else. So why we do that? Because the sun is an indication. It's the indication of life, number one, and it reminds us of our mortality. That this sun, anytime we see it, we are still here. So when you give praises to it, it's saying, thank you for the beauty of existence. So thank you for the flowers, the mountain, the rivers. Thank you for the men, the females, the children. It's giving thanks to that which allows us to exist. But the fact of the matter is, if there is no sun, you're not going to exist.